This week in a conversation, I am welcoming from Nebraska, author Dasha Wallace. She's written her debut memoir titled Isabella and the Beast. But before we get into this wonderful video, I just want to remind everyone to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell so that way every time a video is posted, it'll go directly into your portable. So let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here with an impeccable author, Dasha Wallace. We're going to be talking about a fantastic fantasy novel titled Isabella and the Beast. Dasha, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you.
All right, Dasha says, to begin with, would you please tell the viewers of CSMS Magazine who is Dasha Wallace?
I'm a mom. I have a 5-year-old son, which is pretty much my life. That and writing, though I do love doing martial arts.
Great. Okay. You're not the only one. You're the first author who loves doing martial art. Yeah. It seems like, we as writers, beside our love for writing, we tend to like something else. And usually it stays within the framework of art, because writing is a language art. Okay. So, Dasha, Isabella and the Beast. Let me see if I can get that, because I took some of the notes nicely. Okay. She was nothing more than a commoner living in the world where titles mean everything. But as always, in every fantasy story, there's always some persecution. But it seems to me at this point, she's been hunted by some strange person.
Yeah.
And also, the person seems to be just like when someone is talking to you, and there's always the dangerous loss associated with it. So, would you please tell us how the story develops on this panel?
Actually, so she was trying to escape from the lord of her land.
Okay.
He basically did something that made it so she was under his power.
Okay.
She ended up getting an offer from someone else, and she took it. First chance. And so she end up in a trial to be the next queen. And so she's being used as a pawn. But the guy she tried to escape is hunting her down, though she thinks she's escaped him. And so she now has to survive in this atmosphere where she's a commoner and everybody else has titles, and she doesn't know anything about being, nobility. And she's trying to survive this test, and she ends up trying to save somebody along the way. But obviously she's being used as a pawn. There's people who are cheating and,
Right.
palace intrigue. And
This too of horror, but also I can see a story of survival in it too.
Yes. So she's trying to survive, and also that people can change. Titles don't mean everything. Titles don't define you. Whether it's the titles you give yourself or other people give to you. Because my prince, because obviously it's taken off of Beauty and the Beast, he was raised by the palace guard dogs. And so they call him a beast. When really he's not a beast. And so because he was called a beast, he acts like a beast instead of being treated as a human as he is. And being used as a pawn. And she's called untitled, as it's like spat out like it's something that's, bad, evil thing. She's like, no, my name is Isabella Binder. That came from my father, who adopted me who I love dearly, and I accept that title as myself. So.
But there's a last line over here, if I can get it properly right. Is that you say, while trying to navigate the shadows of the palace, the Lord is hunting her down and is willing to topple kingdoms if it meant getting Isabella back. Now, is it fair to say, Dasha, this story can also be called fantasy and then / wild romance, or some sort of a craziness behind it?
My villain is he's crazy. He is a hunter in all sense of the world. He doesn't lust after her. It's more that he wants her as a trophy to stick on his wall type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so she has unique features.
Okay.
And he is like an exotic hunter. He wants to own her, possess her. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't know that he is following her. He ends up pretending to work with another noble, and he doesn't care that she is in the royal palace. And he's willing to go far to get her. So, but it can be considered a fantasy. I had a really hard time placing this as a genre because it doesn't have magic, but it is in my own unique world. So I had a little bit of a time. Really, I say that it's a retelling of a fairy tale because I do have very strong Beauty and the Beast vibes throughout the story. So, and there is romance involved, but it's more of the start of a romance.
Okay. But if you were to market the book, and what specific genre, because the thing is now in the book industry, especially marketing books, has to be placed in a specific category or genre. So you would do it under what?
I've been marketing as a retelling of a fairy tale.
Okay. But let me ask you this question, Dasha. Those, in order for a story to be classified as a fantasy, does it really have to have magic in it?
That is what I want to know, because even I don't really know how to classify it, because it is set in a different world. So, I mean, it could be classified as fantasy, but I don't know. What are your opinions on this matter?
Well, I mean, the thing is,
generally don't know.
It's just that we've been working some sort of a thin blue line when it comes to place certain stories, because it has all the elements to be described as a fantasy story. But at the same token, you see the undertone of romance on it, an undertone of a story of survival. The protagonist, is pretty multi-dimensional, I can say. So I think it's fair to say that, Dasha, you can market this book as a fantasy story, as a fantasy now.
That helps, because I was lost and confused on what to market it as. It was really difficult, because especially now, since a lot of books are pushing the boundaries of creativity.
Right.
I mean, because you don't want to just say the same things over. You're wanting to put in different ways of going about things, which is making it really difficult for me to actually place it.
True.
Because I'm trying to, change the genre to make it more creative and interesting for people, because retellings of stories have been done. All over the place, they've been done. And so making it my own and then trying to then place it within a box of a genre is really difficult for me.
So have you ever tried maybe a literary fiction, which is something that can even taught at school level?
Yeah, it could be a school level because I made it. There's no cussing. There's no like sexual scenes in my book, and so really anybody can read it. It's more of just like if you're interested in that sort of thing. You know, it's a palace intrigue with some romance in it. It depends on how old you are when you get interested in that. Because I was always reading older books when I was younger, but there are some people who are completely uninterested in that sort of thing. So younger audiences can read it because I don't have anything in there that
could prove to be some sort of
parental, anti-parental. There's nothing in there that is, anti-parental. There's nothing that, and I kind of wanted it to be that way, and I kind of wanted the romance to not go that far because I'm married, and I don't like how romances are in a lot of stories because they don't make sense to me.
But you know that most coming of age stories has to have romance in them because of the simple fact that young people, when they congregate, basically that's what they talk about, right?
Yes, that's all I talk about. And so, as I said, I do have romance in there. Because as I said, I do love romance and I do love a good romance. And so, but I just made it more realistic to me as a person.
Exactly. Dasha, you said that at a very young age, you were fascinated with reading and writing. Was that with fantasy you were?
Oh, I love fantasy. Fantasy was like my go-to. I love fantasy. That was my go-to reading. But of course, I've branched out since then. The only thing I don't really read is biographies.
Why? If I may ask.
Mostly because of how they're written. I do like watching biographies. And I actually do genealogy and family history, and I love doing that. But biographies being read always seems so bland to what actually happens. And so I tend not to read them, though I do find the information fascinating, and I do love learning about, people and stuff like that. So I tend not to just read them. And I have a really hard time with names and dates. And so biographies, there's generally a lot of names and dates involved in them. And I have a hard time keeping track of them.
Okay. So is it fair to say that a biography is too fast paced? In other words, there's no struggle going on, but it depends on the life of the person too.
It does depend on the life of the person. As I said, I just have a hard time finding ones that I like, and so I just go to fantasy because it's easy for me to pick out which ones I like, because a lot of it actually has to do with less the story and more the voice of the person writing the book.
Correct.
Which is why sometimes I just get bored with it, even if the story and their life story is incredibly fascinating.
Right.
If you have a very dry voice, it tends to get rather boring.
Yeah. And then that's what I was going to say. You already answered the question I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Well, apparently, great minds think alike here.
The beauty also lies on the creativity of the writing. Okay, you can make a story sound so dry, but at the same token, another person can pick the same story and then write it in a totally different way that attracts a lot of attention.
Yes. Yes. That's so yeah, it's, as I said, a voice has to do a lot with it, at least for me, for biographies. Fantasy, you can kind of get away with it. It's just because of the intrinsic value of what a fantasy book is. Fantasy usually always makes people think. and you kind of have to think in a fantasy story because, you know, they don't exist. Things don't exist in a fantasy story that exist in the real world. So you intrinsically have to think about it and ponder on it. And
that's true.
Biographies, you know, it's real life. Gravity works like gravity works.
And you know, most fantasy authors that I know of, they have developed some sort of a fascination also with the writing a memoir.
Writing a memoir, huh? I guess I'm too shy.
You are?
I'm too shy.
You don't look like to me because you're very wide open, walking and laughing.
I love talking to people, but don't get me wrong, I'm completely nervous.
You are. Okay.
But I do love talking to people. I'm more nervous the fact that this is being recorded than me talking to people. I love talking to people. But I guess I just talked about my story all the time to different people. That I have a lot of fantasy stories that I have literally sitting on my desk in a file folder that I want to write rather than my own memoir.
I was going to ask you that question, but before we get to that, Dasha, one more question when it comes to genre in literature. What about historical fiction?
Actually, I just wrote my first draft of my next book that is historical fiction.
Really?
Yeah. So hopefully that will be coming out next year. And actually, I started writing my third book, which is science fiction. So because I love so many genres and I have different story ideas that, I mean, I've read different genres. I've read historical fiction. I've read fantasy. I've read like where it's the real world and, you know, there's magic involved. I've read, you know, urban fantasy. I mean, I've read so many different genres that the reason why I wrote this one was because all the laws of the world work the way they work. And I figured that was an easier one to start out with. And once I put it in, because this one took me 6 years because this is my first book. But once it got accepted, like my mindset changed from it being, I will eventually be an author to, oh, I am an author now. Oh, and I wanted to succeed. And so I'm like, well, if I'm going to be an author, I need to write like every day.
Now, if I had to ask you this question, Dasha, I know fantasy is part of it, you're multi-genre. So who you would consider as your preferred author?
Like an author I admire?
Yes. Whose work you admire?
Brandon Sanderson. Actually, so as my book got accepted, I'm like, you know what, I really need to work even harder on my writing skills because this book is a good book. I want my next book to be even better.
Correct.
And because if I'm not growing as a writer, something is wrong.
That's true.
And so I'm like, well, I'm a mom. It's hard to get classes. And I knew that Brandon Sanderson taught writing classes for science fiction and fantasy. I'm like, that would be awesome. To find out every single one of his lectures from last year was on YouTube. Yes, his lectures are amazing and they really changed things because how he teaches is he never because art is very, you know, how people do art is different. Even being an author, how people write is different. Whether you do it in first person, third person, genres, things do different, and how you write it. But you know, some people do it as journal entry snippets and stuff. There's no one particularly right way to write a book.
My next question, because I know your mom, you must love to cook.
Yes, I do know how to cook.
Okay, so what is your preferred cuisine, I would say?
I do love creating. I do two things. I do love creating random, easy desserts, and I also love putting in random spices and things.
You do?
I do like messing with, oh, this spice would probably taste really good with this. Let's put this in, because I do love very savory seasonings and stuff like that. So I really like messing with the seasonings.
Because I know young people like you, they always, you know, they love mixed vegetables and things like that.
I am pretty lazy. I like cooking for other people. Mm-hmm. If people are coming over, I enjoy cooking. Mm-hmm. But when it's just my family, I like cooking less. More because I have to come up with what I'm cooking.
Okay.
I don't like coming up with what we're eating.
Okay.
Because I really don't have like a particular opinion of what I like to eat. And so, yeah, I just like...
If I were to ask you, Dasha, to write an essay on your cooking.
Write an essay on my cooking, huh?
Yeah.
What would I say about it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really don't know. As I said, I like putting in different seasonings, and I like using random seasonings that, you know.
Okay. Now, how about, because you just told me at the beginning, when you write, you just want to be, you write in total silence. You don't want to hear any noise or anything like that. But other writers would tell me they like to put some sort of a quiet music in the background while they're writing. But do you like music or anything?
No, I love music. Don't get me wrong. I love music. But I really get into music.
Okay.
And so I kind of need to feel my own feelings, because I guess I'm what you call a pantser. Mm-hmm. I create for how I write. Mm-hmm. I create a very basic storyline. Mm-hmm. Like I have points that I need to hit in my story, and I know kind of how I want to end it. I know there are certain scenes I need to put in my book, and I write by the seat of my pants.
So let me ask you a question, because I know today, Dasha, is a big day for you. You just mentioned is a release day. I want you to tell the viewers exactly, speak from the heart, because I know a lot of people watch this show. Tell them from your own perspective why it's important for them to go and get Isabella and the Beast today.
This is very important because I've learned a lot of marketing. Getting it today will put because there are so many people out there, so many people who are writing. There are a lot of books people self-publish that go on Amazon daily. And if you don't get reviews and you don't get people buying it off the bat, you get stuck at the bottom of the list that nobody looks at.
Correct.
And so no matter how fantastic a book is, if people don't go past page 2 in Amazon, nobody will know the book. So it's really, really important to buy on the first day. So you get higher on the list, more people can see you, your book is out there. And, it's, you have to kind of play the game. And playing the game means playing Amazon, which means having people write reviews and buy books constantly. And the first day is very, very important because it shows where you're going on that list of Amazon.
So I'm going to ask you a question. Is it part of the same game to try to break the code of Amazon algorithm?
The same game for doing Amazon?
Because a lot of writers are talking about, breaking the code. If you can't get the right keywords, it's a combination of what you're just saying, getting people into reading it and to writing reviews about the book. Nobody will get to see it, no matter how compelling the story can be.
Yeah, it is. It's playing the game. Social media is the same way. Pretty much any sort of advertising is you have to make sure things are seen. Like even every social media that you're on, what gets shown to other people how it gets shown is completely different depending on what platform you are on.
Beautiful.
Like, so it's, as I said, you have to kind of understand and be aware of everything, which makes it really hard because when I was younger, you know, back at the beginning of the year, when I thought being an author was just writing a book. Oh, those were the days.
Exactly.
But now you have to kind of be a business person and be a marketer and be, you know, a lot of things.
If you really want to be competitive in this.
Yes.
Now, I'm just going to say it's been such a pleasure
Thank you.
to have author Dasha Wallace and the conversation, especially on the release day of her compelling story.
Thank you.
I can only wish you good luck. And I have no doubt in my mind that this story, now you and I know, and friends and husband and family, will be certainly a household story.
Thank you.
Okay.
Makes you very happy.